Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The dim light of the bedroom cast long shadows across the floor as John nervously adjusted his shirt collar. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Across the room, James was equally fidgety, his eyes darting between the closet and his friend. So, you ready for this? John's voice cracked slightly. James nodded, a hesitant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. As ready as I'll ever be, I guess. The two had been friends for years, bonding over shared interests in music and art. But recently, they discovered another commonality, a curiosity about crossdressing that had been simmering beneath the surface for both of them. After weeks of hesitant conversations and nervous laughter, they'd finally agreed to explore this interest together. John took a deep breath and opened the closet door. Inside hung an array of feminine clothing they'd carefully curated over the past month, flowing dresses, silky blouses, and skirts in various styles and colors. Ladies first, James quipped, gesturing toward the closet with an exaggerated flourish. John rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a grin. All right, here goes nothing. He reached for a soft blue dress with a floral pattern. The fabric felt cool and smooth against his skin as he slipped it over his head. James helped zip up the back, his hands trembling slightly. "How's it feel?" James asked, his voice barely above a whisper. John turned to face the full-length mirror on the closet door. The dress hugged his body in unfamiliar ways, accentuating curves he'd never noticed before. He ran his hands down the sides, marveling at the sensation. "It's different," he murmured, "but not in a bad way. Actually, it's kind of nice." James nodded encouragingly. "It looks good on you. Really good." John felt a warmth spread through his chest at the compliment. He turned back to James with a newfound confidence. "Your turn." James hesitated for a moment before selecting a deep purple blouse and a black pencil skirt. He changed quickly, keeping his eyes averted from the mirror until he was fully dressed. "Well?" James asked nervously, finally looking up at his reflection. John let out a low whistle. "Wow, you look amazing." The tension in James's shoulders visibly relaxed. He smoothed down the front of the skirt, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, it feels right somehow." They spent the next hour trying on different outfits, giggling and complimenting each other with growing enthusiasm. As the initial awkwardness faded, a sense of joyful liberation took its place. "You know," John said as he twirled in a red cocktail dress, "I think I need a new name to go with this look." James cocked his head, considering. "How about Josephine?" John, now Josephine, beamed. "Josephine? I like it. It feels elegant." "Suits you perfectly, then," James replied with a wink. As the afternoon wore on, they moved on to experimenting with makeup. Neither had much experience, so there were plenty of missteps and laughs as they figured it out together. "Hold still," James instructed, wielding an eyeliner pencil with intense concentration. "I don't want to poke your eye out." Josephine tried her best not to flinch as James carefully applied the liner. "How's it look?" James leaned back, admiring his handiwork. "Not bad, if I do say so myself. You've got some seriously gorgeous eyes, Joe." Josephine blushed at the compliment, still getting used to her new identity. "Thanks. Your turn now." She picked up a tube of lipstick, studying the deep red shade. "This'll look great with your skin tone." As she applied the lipstick to James's lips, Josephine was struck by the intimacy of the moment. There was something deeply vulnerable about helping each other transform like this. "There," she said softly, capping the lipstick. "Perfect." James turned to look in the mirror, his eyes widening at his reflection. The red lipstick contrasted beautifully with his pale skin and dark hair. "Wow," he breathed. "I hardly recognize myself." Josephine squeezed his shoulder. "In a good way, I hope." James nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Definitely in a good way." They spent the rest of the evening lounging in their new outfits, sipping wine and talking more openly than they ever had before. The clothes seemed to have unlocked something in both of them. a willingness to be vulnerable, to share hopes and fears they'd kept hidden. "I've always felt like there was this whole other side of me," Josephine confessed, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "Like I was playing a role, you know? But this feels more like me than anything ever has." James nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know exactly what you mean. It's like I've been wearing a costume my whole life, and I'm only now seeing the real me." As the night grew late, neither wanted it to end. The thought of changing back into their usual clothes felt almost painful. "What if," Josephine began hesitantly, "what if we didn't change back? What if we just stayed like this?" James looked at her, surprise and hope mingling in his expression. "You mean like all the time?" Josephine nodded, her heart pounding. "Yeah, all the time." A slow smile spread across James's face. "I think I'd like that a lot." And so began their new life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and adjustment as Josephine and James, who decided to go by Jamie, embraced their true selves. They went shopping together, building wardrobes that reflected their newfound identities. Josephine favored flowing dresses and delicate jewelry, while Jamie leaned towards a more professional look with tailored blouses and skirts. There were challenges, of course. Telling friends and family was nerve-wracking, but most were supportive, if a bit surprised. Work required some delicate conversations with HR, but both were fortunate to have understanding employers. Through it all, Josephine and Jamie leaned on each other for support. Their friendship deepened into something even more meaningful as they navigated this new chapter of their lives together. One sunny afternoon, about a month into their transition, Josephine and Jamie met for lunch at their favorite cafe. Josephine arrived first, smoothing down her floral sundress as she took a seat at their usual table. Jamie walked in a few minutes later, looking polished in a navy blazer and pencil skirt. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the chair across from Josephine. "Meeting ran long." Josephine waved off the apology. "No worries, how'd it go?" "Really well, actually." Jamie's face lit up. "I closed the Johnson account." "That's fantastic." Josephine reached across the table to squeeze Jamie's hand. "I'm so proud of you." Jamie blushed slightly at the praise. "Thanks, it feels good to be succeeding as me." They ordered their usual, a Cobb salad for Josephine, a turkey club for Jamie, and fell into easy conversation. As they ate, Josephine couldn't help but marvel at how natural this all felt now. "You know," she said, setting down her fork, "I was thinking about that first night, when we tried on clothes together." Jamie nodded, a soft smile playing at her lips. "Seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?" "It really does," Josephine agreed. "I was so nervous, terrified really, but also excited, like I was on the verge of something big." "I felt the same way," Jamie said. "Like I was finally going to be able to breathe after holding my breath for years." Josephine reached across the table, taking Jamie's hand in hers. "I'm so glad we did this together. I don't know if I would have had the courage on my own." Jamie squeezed her hand. "Me neither. You've been my rock through all of this, Jo." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both reflecting on how far they'd come. The waiter arrived with the check, addressing them as ladies without hesitation. It was a small thing, but it still sent a thrill through Josephine. As they left the cafe, Josephine linked her arm through Jamie's. "So, what's next for us?" Jamie looked thoughtful. "Well, I was thinking about taking some dance classes. Always wanted to learn ballet." Josephine's eyes lit up. "Ooh, that sounds fun. Mind if I join you?" "I'd be offended if you didn't," Jamie replied with a grin. They spent the rest of the afternoon window shopping, trying on clothes and accessories that caught their eye. In a small boutique, Josephine fell in love with a delicate silver necklace with a butterfly pendant. "It's beautiful," she sighed, admiring it in the mirror. Jamie appeared behind her, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "It suits you. The butterfly, it's kind of perfect, isn't it? Given everything we've been through." Josephine turned to face her friend, emotion welling up in her chest. It really is. Without hesitation, Jamie took the necklace to the counter. We'll take it, she told the saleswoman. Oh, Jamie, you don't have to, Josephine protested. Jamie waved her off. Consider it a celebration of new beginnings. As they left the store, Josephine touched the butterfly pendant resting against her collarbone. It felt right, like a symbol of the journey they'd undertaken together. The weeks turned into months, and Josephine and Jamie settled into their new lives with growing confidence. They faced challenges head-on, supporting each other through difficult moments and celebrating every victory, no matter how small. One crisp autumn evening, they decided to try out a new restaurant that had opened downtown. Josephine wore a sleek black dress with her butterfly necklace, while Jamie opted for an emerald green jumpsuit that accentuated her tall frame. As they were seated at their table, Josephine noticed a few curious glances from other diners. In the past, such attention might have made her nervous, but now she held her head high, meeting their gazes with a serene smile. "You okay?" Jamie asked softly, noticing her friend's expression. Josephine nodded, her smile widening. "More than okay. I was just thinking, a year ago, I would have been terrified to be out like this. But now I feel proud, like I'm finally living authentically." Jamie reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "I know exactly what you mean. It's like the world finally sees us the way we've always seen ourselves." They ordered a bottle of champagne to celebrate, toasting to their journey and the road ahead. As they clinked glasses, Josephine felt a surge of gratitude for her friend, for the courage they'd found together. "To us," she said softly. "To us," Jamie echoed, her eyes shining. As they enjoyed their meal, they talked about their plans for the future. Jamie had been promoted at work and was considering going back to school for an MBA. Josephine had started writing a novel, drawing on her experiences to craft a story of self-discovery and transformation. "I am thinking of joining a support group," Josephine mentioned between bites of her risotto. "Not because I'm struggling or anything, but I think it might be nice to connect with others who've been through similar experiences." Jamie nodded encouragingly. "That sounds like a great idea. Mind if I tag along?" "I'd love that," Josephine replied warmly. As they finished their dessert, a decadent chocolate torte they decided to split, Josephine felt a sense of contentment wash over her. She looked at Jamie, her dear friend, who had become so much more, and felt overwhelmed with affection. "Thank you," she said suddenly, her voice thick with emotion. Jamie looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For everything. For being there from the beginning, for taking this journey with me, for helping me become who I was always meant to be." Jamie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Oh, Jo, you don't have to thank me. You've done the same for me. We did this together." They left the restaurant hand in hand, stepping out into the cool night air. The city buzzed around them, full of life and possibility. Josephine took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "So," Jamie said, bumping her shoulder playfully against Josephine's. "Where to next?" Josephine looked at her friend, her partner in this grand adventure, and smiled. "Anywhere," she replied. "As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything." And with that, they set off down the street, two women walking tall and proud, ready to face whatever the future might hold. The butterfly pendant glinted in the streetlights, a reminder of how far they'd come and the beauty of transformation. As they walked, Josephine reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. From those first nervous moments in her bedroom to now, confidently striding down the street in heels, it felt like a lifetime had passed. She thought about all the small victories along the way. The first time she'd gone grocery shopping in a dress without feeling self-conscious. The day Jamie had nailed an important presentation at work and been congratulated by her colleagues without a hint of awkwardness. The moment they'd both realized they could go for days without thinking about their past identities. There had been difficult times too, of course. Not everyone in their lives had been immediately accepting. Josephine's parents had needed time to adjust, and Jamie had lost touch with a few old friends who couldn't seem to understand. But for every setback, there had been triumphs, new friends who accepted them without question, family members who made sincere efforts to use the right names and pronouns, strangers who simply saw them as the women they were. As they approached a small park, Jamie tugged on Josephine's hand. "Let's sit for a bit," she suggested, gesturing to a bench beneath a street lamp. They settled onto the bench, Josephine smoothing her dress as she sat. For a moment, they just enjoyed the quiet of the evening, the distant sounds of the city providing a gentle backdrop. "Do you ever miss it?" Jamie asked suddenly, her voice soft. "Your old life, I mean." Josephine considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but not in the way you might think. I miss the simplicity, I guess, the not having to explain myself to anyone. But I wouldn't trade this, who I am now, for anything." Jamie nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I feel the same way. It's like I miss certain aspects of my old life, but I don't miss being that person, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," Josephine assured her. They fell silent again, each lost in their own thoughts. A cool breeze rustled the leaves of nearby trees, and Josephine shivered slightly. Without a word, Jamie shrugged off her jacket and draped it over Josephine's shoulders. "Always the gentleman," Josephine teased, though she snuggled gratefully into the warmth of the jacket. Jamie laughed, a rich, full sound that never failed to make Josephine smile. "Old habits die hard, I guess." As they sat there, Josephine found herself thinking about the future. For so long, she'd been focused on the present, on becoming comfortable in her own skin, on navigating the day-to-day challenges of her new life. But now, she felt ready to look ahead. "I've been thinking," she began hesitantly, "about dating." Jamie turned to look at her, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Oh?" Josephine nodded, feeling a blush creep up her cheeks. "Yeah, I feel like I'm finally comfortable with who I am, and I think I'm ready to share that with someone." A range of emotions flickered across Jamie's face, too quickly for Josephine to interpret. Then she smiled, warm and encouraging. "That's great, Jo. You deserve to be happy." "Thanks," Josephine replied, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness at the prospect. "It's a little scary, though, the idea of putting myself out there." Jamie reached over, taking Josephine's hand in hers. "You're amazing, Jo. Any person would be lucky to have you in their life." Josephine squeezed her hand gratefully. "What about you? Have you thought about dating?" Jamie shrugged, her gaze drifting to the distance. "A little. I'm not sure I'm quite ready yet, but maybe soon." They sat in companionable silence for a while longer, each contemplating the new horizons opening up before them. As the night grew cooler, they finally stood to head home. "Movie night tomorrow?" Jamie asked as they reached the corner where they would part ways. Josephine grinned. "Wouldn't miss it. My place or yours?" "Yours," Jamie decided. "You have the comfier couch." They hugged goodbye, holding each other tightly for a moment before stepping apart. As Josephine watched Jamie walk away, she felt a surge of affection for her friend. Whatever the future held, she knew they would face it together. The next evening, Josephine bustled around her apartment, tidying up before Jamie arrived. She'd changed into comfortable leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. It felt good to be relaxed, to not worry about presenting a perfect image to the world. A knock at the door signaled Jamie's arrival. Josephine opened it to find her friend laden with bags of takeout and a bottle of wine. "I come bearing gifts," Jamie announced with a grin. Josephine laughed, taking some of the bags from her. "My hero, come on in." They settled on the couch, spreading out containers of Chinese food on the coffee table. As Jamie poured the wine, Josephine scrolled through their streaming options. "What are we in the mood for?" she asked. "Romance? Comedy? Action?" Jamie considered for a moment. "How about a classic? Something we've both seen a million times." They eventually settled on an old favorite, a romantic comedy they'd watched countless times in college. As the familiar scenes played out, Josephine found herself paying more attention to Jamie than to the movie. Her friend looked relaxed, laughing at the jokes she must have heard a dozen times before. There was an ease to her now, a comfort in her own skin. that had been missing in the early days of their transition. Halfway through the movie, Jamie caught Josephine watching her. "What?" she asked, a bemused smile on her face. Josephine shook her head, smiling back. "Nothing, just, I'm happy, you know. I'm happy we're here, like this." Jamie's expression softened. "Me too, Joe. Me too." As the credits rolled, they found themselves talking late into the night. They discussed their hopes for the future, their fears, their dreams. It was a conversation they'd had many times before, but it felt different now, more real, more possible. "You know," Jamie said, as the night grew late, "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about dating." Josephine felt her heart skip a beat, though she wasn't sure why. "Oh?" Jamie nodded, her gaze fixed on her wine glass. "Yeah, and I think maybe I am ready. Or at least I want to be." "That's great," Josephine said, ignoring the strange twinge in her chest. "You deserve to be happy, Jamie." Jamie looked up then, her eyes meeting Josephine's. There was something in her gaze, something Josephine couldn't quite name. "Joe," Jamie began, her voice soft. But whatever she was about to say was cut off by the shrill ring of Josephine's phone. They both jumped, the moment broken. Josephine grabbed her phone, frowning at the screen. "It's my mom," she said apologetically. "I should take this." Jamie nodded, leaning back on the couch. "Of course. Go ahead." As Josephine stepped into the other room to take the call, she couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just slipped away. But her mother's voice on the other end of the line drew her attention, and by the time she returned to the living room, the moment had passed. Jamie was cleaning up their dinner mess, humming softly to herself. She looked up as Josephine entered. "Everything okay?" Josephine nodded, moving to help with the cleanup. "Yeah, just Mom checking in. She wants to have lunch next week." They fell into an easy rhythm, working together to tidy the apartment. As they finished, Jamie glanced at the clock. "I should probably head home," she said, though she made no move to leave. Josephine felt a sudden reluctance to see her go. "You could stay," she offered. "It's late, and the spare room is all made up." Jamie hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yeah, okay, thanks." As they prepared for bed, moving around each other with the ease of long familiarity, Josephine found herself thinking about how far they'd come, from those first tentative steps into a new identity to now, comfortable and confident in who they were. "Good night, Joe," Jamie said softly as she headed to the spare room. "Good night, Jamie," Josephine replied, watching her friend disappear behind the door. As she lay in bed that night, Josephine's mind whirled with thoughts of the future, of dating, of relationships, of finding someone to share her life with. But as she drifted off to sleep, it was Jamie's face that filled her dreams. The next morning, Josephine woke to the smell of coffee brewing. She padded into the kitchen to find Jamie at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes. "Morning, sleepyhead," Jamie greeted her with a warm smile. Josephine yawned, reaching for a mug. "Morning, you didn't have to do all this." Jamie shrugged, sliding a perfect golden pancake onto a plate. "I wanted to. Consider it a thank you for letting me crash." They ate breakfast together, chatting about their plans for the day. As Jamie prepared to leave, Josephine found herself wishing she could stay longer. "Thanks again for everything," Jamie said as she gathered her things. Josephine walked her to the door. "Anytime. You know you're always welcome here." They hugged goodbye, and as Jamie's arms wrapped around her, Josephine felt a flutter in her stomach that she couldn't quite explain. She watched from the window as Jamie walked down the street, her heart feeling oddly heavy. Over the next few weeks, life continued as usual. Josephine threw herself into her writing, making significant progress on her novel. Jamie was busy with work, often staying late at the office to prepare for an important presentation. They still made time for each other, meeting for quick lunches or coffee when they could, but something felt different, a subtle shift in their dynamic that Josephine couldn't quite put her finger on. One evening, as Josephine was working on a particularly challenging chapter of her book, her phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. "Can we talk? It's important." Josephine felt a surge of anxiety at the message. She quickly replied, asking Jamie to come over. An hour later, there was a knock at her door. Josephine opened it to find Jamie looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Hey," Josephine said, ushering her in. "Everything okay?" Jamie nodded, though she wouldn't quite meet Josephine's eyes. "Yeah, I need to tell you something." They settled on the couch, and Josephine waited patiently for Jamie to speak. Finally, taking a deep breath, Jamie began. "Remember when we talked about dating? About being ready to put ourselves out there?" Josephine nodded, her heart racing, though she wasn't sure why. "Well," Jamie continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want, who I want to be with." She paused, finally looking up to meet Josephine's gaze. "And I realized the person I want to be with is you, Jo." Josephine felt as though the air had been sucked out of the room. "Me?" she whispered. Jamie nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "You. It's always been you, I think. It took me a while to see it." 1,000 thoughts raced through Josephine's mind. Memories of their years of friendship, of the journey they'd taken together, of the way her heart skipped a beat every time Jamie smiled. "Jamie," she began, her voice thick with emotion, I think I feel the same way." The smile that broke across Jamie's face was radiant. She reached out, taking Josephine's hands in hers. "Yeah?" Josephine nodded, feeling the tears prick at her eyes. "Yeah, I didn't realize it until now." Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.